Welcome back, fellow football fanatics. This is College Football with Sam. And once again, we have Kris joining us, who I am very thankful is coming on our channel. And we're talking about all the craziness from yesterday and also just briefly the Billy Napier news from today. So, how are you doing, Kris? And let us know where everyone can find you and what are your thoughts on the developments this morning from across college football?
I'm easy to find. I'm on Dead Air Sports or Menace to Sports, one of the two. No, honestly, it's funny because the Billy Napier news, while it shouldn't have been like I guess, day altering for content, kind of ended up being that. And news kind of got out about him getting fired about a week ago, regardless of what happened yesterday. And sometimes I see those reports. I'm like, okay, like, are we serious? Are we really going to fire him after a win? And for them, it kind of signaled that, like, look, like, Billy knows he's, a walking dead man, but we're going to let him coach one more game. And we're kind of on the hunt for our new coach. We're ready to start this coaching search a little bit earlier. So, when that kind of thing happens, it definitely, like, the more interesting story, Sam, for me at least, is the ripple effect. Because the ripple effect that I kind of floated to you beforehand was, like, I think that Lane Kiffin's the obvious hire. I said it on my show that the splashy hire and the right hire aren't always the same thing. This is it being the same thing in my opinion. And I think Lagway, that's how you keep him there, by getting him somebody that's been effective with every single quarterback he's had since being at Ole Miss. And so that ripple effect, I think, is going to be more interesting in the actual Billy Napier story, because you and I both knew at the beginning of the year, like, he was not going to make it, right? Like, we've known that, like, that's been the worst kept secret in college football, was that Billy Napier was not going to be the head coach of Florida for much longer.
Yeah.
So that's just my general thoughts on Billy. I don't know if you had an opinion on him. I thought that he never should have been hired, and that was them kind of trying to be the smartest in the room instead of doing the right thing, which I think was in front of them all along.
I hate watched Florida the entire year. So I kind of agree with that sentiment. I do think that Kiffin is the obvious hire. One thing I will say, and I think this goes for both Penn State and Florida, is you better hope that LSU job doesn't come open. I think it
Ooh.
will, personally. I think Kelly will be out at the end of the year.
This year, you think Kelly's done?
Yeah, they're 5-2, and they
They
have
are.
Texas A&M,
Yes.
Oklahoma, and
Yes.
Alabama left on the schedule, who are all definitively better than they are.
Okay.
Do you think he
Okay.
survives at 7-5, eight
It's
and four?
funny. It's funny because the next coach that I had on the list was my head was like Sharon Moore. Like, I thought that this week, if they did lose to Washington in a non-competitive game, that you could see the end of Sharon Moore. So I haven't even had a chance to kind of, like, pivot and think about who could be it after watching, Michigan get the win over the weekend. If Brian Kelly, that would be awful, right? Like, if you're Florida, you want to be the best job, resource wise, state recruiting wise, and upside wise, and you're not the best job if LSU opens up, unless you convince a coach that Lagway, it makes your job in the immediate future better than the LSU job, which is going to be the interesting, I guess, development.
Yeah, I have an interesting question that I may or may not forget when we get to our Penn State segment related to all of that and comparing those jobs. But speaking of Sharon Moore, I was in complete agreement that if he lost to Washington, things would get ugly pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Washington is a team that is good. They're probably top 25 in power ratings, but they are very limited. I don't think they have a shot at beating Oregon. They didn't have much of a shot at beating Ohio State outside of, the early jitters and Ohio State's red zone offense figuring itself out. Um, yeah, they're not really a playoff team. They could be a playoff contender due to things bouncing their way, but I thought Michigan needed this win.
Yeah.
And through three quarters, it was pretty rough and ugly, but Michigan looked like the better team kind of from start to finish, and in the fourth quarter turned it up. I'm curious as to what your thoughts were on this game, what it may mean for Michigan's future, and how you view them.
Sam, I picked Washington to beat Michigan. I did. I've said it with enough conviction because I felt like after the USC game, you could see teams going one of two directions. Are you going to fall off the cliff entirely? Is this going to be the pebble on the windshield that shatters everything? or is your program culture strong enough to where you can kind of keep things insulated and kind of elevate your game and acknowledge that, okay, yeah, we lost to USC, but that's not who we are. That was just a stinker. And I thought that maybe they were going to shatter because I just watched Penn State shatter, and I thought Penn State probably, likely, deservedly had a better culture than Michigan. So after the first 3 drives, I looked up and I'm like, damn, like I got it wrong. Like Michigan's gonna win this football game. The physicality was back. It felt like every yard that Washington got, they had to scratch and claw for. And when you feel that way in the beginning of the game, it becomes really easy to tell who's gonna win the game. And everything that Washington did felt a little fluky to me early. And I'm like, okay, like Michigan's back. Like they got buy-in. You know, I know the people like to laugh at the Sharon Moore thing. It is kind of corny, the blue collar jacket. But there's a level of buy-in because, again, we've seen teams and we've seen programs fracture. They didn't fracture at all. And that's a good Washington team. I was one of the guys who was like, hey, look, this Washington team should be ranked. It's just a disgrace they're not. And so I'm giving Michigan kind of flowers for a ranked win, albeit at home. And then also the other part of it is the Big House, I thought, at least through the TV, sounded a little louder, more aggressive than I thought they would for an unranked matchup, quote unquote. So kudos to Sharon Moore, kudos to Michigan for kind of getting that one done.
Is this Sharon Moore's best win at Michigan? Like, I know they have the Alabama and Ohio State wins, but I think you can chalk that up to with how close they were, some decisions that were made on the other side. And this one was, at the end of the day, you know, a dominant victory that you had to coach well and to win.
Yeah, you know, this game meant the most for the character and future of a Sharon Moore program. Like you said, the Michigan game, you could chalk that up to, like, is that Ryan Day's fault? But this was a game where, like, adversity-wise, like, this program was facing adversity. I was going on my Big Ten college football show talking about, like, look, they need to move on from Sharon. Like, they need to have a real national coaching search and get the right guy in place. And with that kind of noise, for that to be kind of kept on the outside of the program and to get buy-in, because you don't win that style without extreme buy-in, right? Like that is a we need buy-in kind of thing. No, this was the most important win for, this is going to be in the Sharon Moore documentary if it ends up working out. There was doubt. Then the Washington game happens. It's like, okay, we're back. We're good. It's not fluky. So, no, huge win for him at this part of his career.
100% agree. And I can't wait to see where Michigan goes forward from here. I thought they would be 5-2 at this point in the year. They are. There's some things that they're better at than I thought, some things they are worse at than I thought, but they are still in the hunt for a college football playoff spot. Granted, they win out, and that's going to be a very challenging task. And the task they'll have to overcome would be an Ohio State team who's still ranked number 1 and is 7-0. So they murdered Wisconsin. I think we all expected this to happen, but just let me know your general thoughts on, you know, Ohio State and maybe a little bit about Wisconsin and Luke Fickell.
I don't know. I saw the Vegas odds, Luke Fickell minus 250 last time I checked to be the next head coach fired. It's been a disaster there. I think he should get fired. I like Luke. Sam, I don't know where you're at with this, but I am a firm believer that when you get to a Power 5 job, if you gamble on something that didn't help you get there and it doesn't hit, you deserve to get fired. And I think that Luke Fickell gambled on something that was never a part of any Luke Fickell program. That's the air raid. That's Phil Longo. He gambled on that and went outside of his recruiting base to hire an offensive coordinator, and that set the program backwards. And for that, I think you deserve to get fired. And I love Luke. I obviously Ohio guy, and I want him to be the next defensive line coach at Ohio State. But he was so busy trying to chase what Ryan Day had done and trying to prove and trying to try out to be the next head coach at Ohio State if Ryan Day ever went to the NFL, that he got away from who he was, and he wanted to prove that, look, I can modernize and have a modern offense. And in doing that, he lost himself somewhere along the way. And I'm a believer that the Big Ten needs Wisconsin to be a good program. For me, I'm Big Ten Kris Drew. I think the Big Ten should be by far and away the best conference in the sport. I need Wisconsin to be a serviceable program to get there, and they're not right now. They're god-awful. They're atrocious. And to the point where Ohio State went into that game like, okay, this is the sandbox. This is the playground, right? Like, we have not asked Julian Sain to drop back 40 times. We know that we could do it against Wisconsin and not risk losing because that's how bad Wisconsin is, just to see what Julian Sain can do. And obviously Julian Sain can handle it, and we knew he could, but this Wisconsin team is truly awful. They're truly abysmal.
Yeah, they have absolutely no depth. So, like, aside from thinking Ohio State is obviously an elite team and number one, you don't really take much away from this game outside of already what you knew from Ohio State because Wisconsin's that bad. Is that what I'm gathering?
Yeah, I mean, the thing I've taken away is I'm of a believer that this is a big puzzle piece or a big puzzle. Every team is trying to put together their puzzle as fast as possible. I think maybe the last remaining piece of the Ohio State puzzle that they looked for answers for in this game is what are we going to do at right guard, because our run game should be running all over programs like this, and they're not, because the right guard spot is bad. And Luke Fickell, as a DC, the one thing he'll do is find the fish in the offensive line if there is one. There's a bad one at Ohio State. And now week over week, the tape is getting worse and worse and worse. So that's my takeaway from this game is Ohio State, to be the team that wins back-to-back and kind of dominates, well, which they could with this kind of right guard play. But the thing that could end up crippling them on their hunt for back-to-back is how bad the right guard play is, because it's directly hurting the run game, which is directly putting this offense in somewhat of a weird territory, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's perfect. I think their passing attack is phenomenal, is showcased, and the defense is, it's generationally impressive through 7 games. We'll see if that holds, but it's really fun to watch. Do you think that with what's been going on with the run game, do you think that is just a right guard issue, or do you think that extends to any other position?
I think at times the tight ends have not been great in some of the run blocking stuff. I mean, they were bad last week, but for the majority of the year, they've been pretty good. I also think there is some frustration in terms of like lack of commitment to wanting to like weather a team, because it's like if you're getting 2 yards here, 3 yards here, 2 yards here, 3 yards here, and you've got Carnell Tate on that side and Jeremiah Smith on that side, it's hard to get yourself to keep running into that brick wall. So I think that's a commitment probably issue maybe to it as well. And obviously when you throw to those two, it shortens drives, right?
Yes.
Like if I throw to Jeremiah Smith, you're shortening the drive because you're going to score if you give him the ball 3 times. Like same with Carnell Tate. So, I think some of it's play calling, some of it's, play sequencing, which I think is a really underrated art in college football. But I think it's mostly the guard play.
That makes sense. One more thing before we move on to Indiana. Is Hartline still the sole play caller? Because I keep seeing Day with the play sheet and the microphone down, or is that just him relaying to guys?
I do not. I mean, Day has his input in the play calling. It's mostly Brian. It's mostly Brian Hartline. Excuse me. It's a little bit of at one point it was a lot of the Ask Madden kind of thing, like ask Ryan and here's 3 plays, pick one. But Shane Bowen's involved too in some of the play calling, but primarily it is Ryan and it is Brian. Excuse me. But there are times where you can feel when it's heavily influenced by Ryan, if that makes sense. Brian, the rhyming's throwing me off.
Yes. Yeah. Okay, thanks for the insight, because I keep seeing him with the play sheet, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's actually him calling the plays, but it's good to get information from someone who has deeper connections to the program. So Indiana, they kind of started off pretty sleepy on defense against MSU, but then after a quarter, they turned it up, and they won pretty dominantly. I don't really want to talk about Michigan State too much because they played probably an A-plus game on offense and were still held to 13 points. I more so want to get your thoughts on Indiana and where you think they rank in the national pecking order.
2. I think Indiana won that game like a dominant team that has an emotional win the week before. That's how they won that game. And they're 2. They're the number 2 team in the country. In terms of challengers to Ohio State, I think that Bama is scarier. I think Notre Dame is scarier, but they have 1 loss and 2 losses. So Indiana's the number 2 team in the country, and I think that if you squint your eyes, it looks like Bama, like the old Bama, like the Nick Saban Bama. Same colors, similar colors. And I think it's a lot of brand bias if you have them anywhere lower than 2, to me. So I think they're really good. I think Sig is the real deal. And it's like in a world where, blue chip ratios matter and trench play matters, all that matters. There's always room in every sport for the one exception. And I think it's very clear who that exception is. And it's Kris made in Indiana. So they're number 2, Sam. Like that's kind of it. They're just it.
Yeah. I have them top 4, kind of in that tier where I think you got Indiana, Oregon, Ohio State, Alabama. I think Ohio State and Alabama have the strongest argument to be number 1 or number 2. IU, Oregon, they have
Yeah.
an argument too, but they're definitely in the top 4. I think that's my tier 1 in football right now, are those 4 teams. And it's been impressive watching how much they've grown from last year to this year for Indiana.
Bingo.
That's
Here we go, Sam. And I don't want to cut you off, but in my head personally, I thought to myself, I would be wildly impressed if Cignetti and Indiana took a small step backwards. It's almost impossible for them to even remain the same as last year. So nowhere in my mind did I consider it even a remote possibility that they would get better than they were last year. And that has been the flooring thing for me. Again, I pictured an idea in my head about, okay, if they remain the same, it's a miracle. If they take a small step backwards, it's wildly impressive. On my little select Indiana's future sheet, there was nowhere for the get better. There was no get better option. It was A, small step backwards, B, remain the same, C, fall off a cliff. That was my ABC. There was no D. So and I'm obsessed with Cignetti, man. Like I'm of the belief that he is, like, this coaching job he's done the last 2 years is the greatest coaching job we've seen in all of sports in that same window.
Yeah. Crazy. That was perhaps the most redeeming prediction on my channel that I think, I don't know if it helps cancel out the Penn State one or not. That was just, that's so insane.
We were on the Penn State ship together, man. We were on that ship. We went down together. You caught a lot more flack than I did. But it's funny. Someone texted me. I wore a Penn State hat, Sam, the Friday before they played Oregon. And someone reminded me last week, or told me last week, that, since you wore that Penn State hat, they had not won a football game. And that I was the curse. And I was like, wow, okay. I'll never wear an Ohio State hat on the show a single time.
Yeah. I actually thought from a power rating standpoint, Indiana was going to be better. And I was pretty public about that. But
You were.
Oregon, that win was very impressive. That's one thing, along with thinking that Miami in preseason research would be better than Clemson. Those are the 2 predictions I wish I stuck with, was that Indiana would beat Oregon and that Miami was going to be better than Clemson based on like preseason PFF grades that were screaming at me. But I didn't listen to them, whatever the case. How far do you think Indiana can go in the CFP? Do you think because of the talent they need a favorable draw, or do you think they can punch against several teams in a row?
I think they could punch against anybody. Like I think they could punch against anybody. And I think college football and the recruiting world is not ready for them to beat another really elite team, because then it's gonna shake things up, because they're gonna get a big budget push in their roster building this next year. And before, it was about, okay, recruiting to Indiana is hard. Now it's it's like they're turning down elite players. They're just maximizing players that were looked over. So I think they could punch against anybody, Sam. And I think when they do, get ready, because it's going to shake things up. People forget they almost landed Juju Lewis.
Wow.
The 5-star kid. Like his last 2 were Colorado, Georgia, and Indiana. And I joked about it. But do not get it twisted. They've been able to win with not elite talent. When they beat somebody, and I know Sig knows, when they beat another big team in a playoff, the recruiting will turn up even more. So I'm ready for them to beat somebody big. People don't know. He was the primary recruiter for Julio.
Yeah, and Mark Ingram.
Yeah, people don't talk about that, man. He's got SEC recruiting chops. He's got people fooled like he's just some little school. I got to go deep into the weeds to go get guys. No. If he feels like he's got the guns to go in that house and go grab a couple 5-stars, he's going to go do it. And this year's about grabbing the gun.
The 5-star defensive lineman who committed to Texas Tech and like Georgia, Ohio State, all those people were on him. Guess who else was on him? Like in his final top 6, it was Indiana.
The thing is, they've been able to win with these lesser guys, but they have been sneaking around on all these kids' top 5s for a while now. And that is signaling, okay, get ready, it's coming. And I just found out they got some big time booster support towards roster building. So Sig is going to get one. He's going to get one. I think if they get a bye, he could absolutely win 2 playoff games.
That's absolutely phenomenal. Let's talk about briefly the team that lost to Indiana, but then didn't feel sorry for themselves. They didn't get down on themselves. They went on the road and they beat Rutgers 56-10, and I think it was 42-3 at the half. Kaliakmanis didn't even complete 40% of his throws, and he's been balling out. I'm personally of the opinion, and I've kind of had this ever since they looked good earlier in their non-conference games, that Oregon is one of those top teams that, because of their youth, has the most room to grow out of anyone. Because I think that freshman, sophomore class is amongst one of the nation's best, and they're so young at a variety of positions where just get them more experience. I think it's kind of like Ohio State with their running back room. Like, just get the younger, more talented players more experience, and things will evolve and things will get better. Where would you have them pegged in football?
Oregon?
Yes.
Probably right behind Indiana, because I think that's kind of how close they are. I would have a tough time, obviously, putting them above Indiana. I do think if they played again, I might pick Oregon. Just kind of believing in kind of what you believe in terms of like the growth they're going to go through. But they're a top 5 team to me, Sam. Like I'm not. Here's the thing: if I have Indiana as my number two team in the country, I'm not going to fault Oregon for losing to them.
No.
I'm not. So that's kind of my stance on Oregon. I do think Dante Moore has the biggest chance for boom or bust in a postseason run, because I think sometimes he really looks and feels the part. Other times it looks a little too fast and sped up for him. But I saw him get into a rhythm against Penn State and kind of what that looked like when he started like being the baller and creator. So I'd agree with you. Tons of room to grow. I do think that Notre Dame has more room to grow because their quarterback has more room to grow than Dante Moore, if I was going to push back a little bit. But that's just about it for them.
We'll talk about Notre Dame towards the end, saving the best for last, because that was a really good game. Now we get to circle back to Penn State and the ugliness of losing to Iowa, which they were favored, but still losing in that fashion was pretty painful. Florida or Penn State? Because we know that LSU's a better job than both. Which is the better job in the post-NIL world, or the NIL world?
I think I'm inclined to say Florida, even though I am interested by some of the verbiage in the Adidas press release about NIL opportunities for those athletes. But I've been to Penn State before. It's a weird place to get to. Don't love the campus. And that's obviously like a little Kris Drew nitpick in the middle of this. But Florida just has a better recruiting base in a weaker conference, and they have the quarterback for the future already locked and pretty proven. So I think Florida's likely the better job. Again, being in a weaker conference also matters because you could have a quicker turnaround. But they're close. The jobs are close, but I think I would nod Florida right now.
Are they really in a like weaker conference, or are the top teams in the SEC just not nearly as good as the top teams in the Big Ten? Because I kind of get the feeling that, like, if Arkansas is the easiest game on Florida's schedule, that's tougher than Purdue being the easiest on Penn State's, for example.
I guess for me at least, I think the SEC is a weaker conference overall. I think that they benefit from a lot of things, and one of the things being like name brandness, and we kind of excuse some of the really close games because we think, okay, like this team's actually better than that. But like in the Big Ten, if a school on Kentucky's level played Ohio State really closely, it wouldn't be about, oh, it's a tough conference. It would be about, oh, Ohio State's fraudulent. So I think the Big Ten is a tougher conference. all in all through and through. And I think honestly UCLA and Northwestern beating Penn State strengthened my argument, but I will listen to anything else. And also I think there's a shift coming, and I put that reasoning in there as a little bit of a dig to SEC, just so they know I'm Big Ten Chris. They're not getting the crown for me, dog. Like we just Midwest is dominating national titles here for the last couple of years, so they're not going to get it from me.
And they're probably going to win another one.
Yes, they are.
With the exception of maybe Alabama. I think that your top three in the Big Ten right now would handily beat most of the top three from any other conference.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that I would push back on some Big Ten people for like talking about depth is just some of the NFL players or highly talented players or body types that some of those like Florida, it'd be one thing if they were a Georgia or maybe a bigger SEC school and they had to go through the gauntlet, and at that point it's not really a gauntlet. But Florida, I mean, this isn't Urban Meyer's Florida anymore. This is so far removed from that you're closer to Iowa in terms of a quality of team than you are to Alabama or Georgia. And for me, I think the climb up at Penn State will be much easier. If Florida gets Kiffin, I think that's different, and they probably will. But I think the average coach going to Penn State with the culture that they have and their Northeast recruiting base and the schedule they have next year is pretty favorable. But I can understand why you'd say Florida's a better job.
I think I would take them now because they've got the quarterback in place that I trust too. And that's like a little bit of short-sightedness because I do think patience in college football is dying very quickly thanks to Cignetti.
Yeah. Saban ruined it, and then Cignetti is just kind of putting the
twisting
hand.
the knife. He's twisting the knife.
Yeah, it's crazy. I in the short term, I will probably agree with you if they get the right guy because of Lagway and some of the other pieces they could bring back, and they've recruited better than Penn State just a little bit. But I think long-term wise, like Penn State with the money that I think they have with the right fit could I think there's a lot of people who say Penn State reached their ceiling under Franklin, and they're saying that because they want that to be the case. Like, if I'm Michigan, I don't want Penn State to become this national title contender because that puts more pressure on me.
It's the Brian Kelly Notre Dame thing.
Yeah. Like, if I'm Ohio State, I don't want Penn State to up their recruiting and start dominating the DMV and be in Indy every year. If I'm Oregon, same thing.
Yeah.
Not saying they can't beat Penn State. I mean, Ohio State owns Penn State. Oregon does too. But, I mean, like, there's a reason Kirby Smart wants the playoffs to be expanded, and he's one of the best in the business. You want the path to be easier. And Penn State becoming what it can be will make the path harder for lack of a more, like, expanded nuanced take. So for Notre Dame against USC, they beat them 34-24. Do you agree with me that this doesn't really change anything about Lincoln Riley's job security?
No, it doesn't change anything about Lincoln's job security.
Still think they're... Wait. Do you think they're heading in a good direction, USC?
USC, I do. I am a believer that USC is heading the right direction. I think that Notre Dame is one of the best teams in the country. And so them losing to USC does not change my view on USC. And I'm also like seeing versions of USC that make me feel a lot better about the previous versions that were more like glass cannons. I think right now they're a dangerous team, not a team that like teams can't wait to go play because they're going to blow out. And they've got teams' attention. So I like where USC is. I think that Lincoln Riley is a slow learner, but he's learning on the job. Again, I view him as a first-time head coach. I think he just took Oklahoma and then went to California. So this is like all part of his first little swoop. But no, I think that USC should feel good about where their program is. Now, if they would have lost to Michigan in bad fashion the week before, the answer is completely different. But at least this program year over year, or at least this year, is getting what I'm calling building blocks for the future. Because here we go, Sam. Did you think USC was going to compete for anything this year?
I thought they'd compete for the playoffs, but that was a very bold take of mine.
Okay. So for me, I thought that they were competing to be a fringe team in the playoffs, and I still think that they can have that have the conversation. And so I'm not down on where they're at, and I'm not going to take a loss that you took to Notre Dame, who I think is one of the most dangerous teams in the country. That's not going to impact anything.
Yeah, that's very sensical. Um, it was so interesting watching that game. Notre Dame was clearly better on O line and D line.
Yeah.
Carr had his worst game, I think, by a mile. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, he had his worst game by a wide stretch, and I compared it on my show to Notre Dame is the pitcher that has a 97-mile-per-hour fastball, but they choose to throw curveballs and work backwards. CJ Carr is the curveball because Notre Dame's fastball is the run game. And so it was good for them to remind people that, look, I know we've been having CJ Carr aired out, kind of projecting towards what we might need late, but we're a fastball team, and our fastball is this run game. I mean, Jeremiah Love and Price, I mean, that is what I call the running back equivalent to Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, I after watching that game last night, I completely agree with that. I think that if you removed even one of them from the team, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um so I know they were able to do some things defensively against USC, but I think part of that may have been the idea and really just the fact that Riley likes to run the ball, and that's his bread and butter, and they couldn't do that. You said earlier you think that Alabama and Notre Dame are the biggest threats to Ohio State. With Notre Dame's secondary outside of Moore being as kind of porous in big games as it gets,
Yeah.
why would you have them as one of the threats to the current number one team?
So for me, in a playoff run, Sam, you need three things. You need a quarterback you can trust. You need an offense that's capable in a given moment of going point for point with somebody, and then a defense that can control the line of scrimmage for a moment in time. And I think both those schools kind of check those three boxes that I'm open to kind of discussing and moving through. But I know that like those two teams can win in three different ways. And I don't know if any other team in the country can win in that group of ways. Like I love Indiana. I think for Indiana to win games like that, they need everything to go kind of one way, because they don't have the top end talent and they don't really want to get into like a depth match, I guess, with other teams. So Notre Dame, I think because CJ Carr can go point for point with anybody, alleviates some of the secondary concerns. And I also, and maybe this is my Ohio Stateness, I trust Chris Ash in playoff settings. I do. I saw Chris Ash really work magic with the Ohio State defense and had them peak at the end of the year, obviously on their natty run. And I think if the Notre Dame defense was going to be something that was going to be a concern, I trust that by the time they get to the 12-team playoff, assuming they win 10 straight games, the defense will at least tighten up. And we saw it. Like they forced, Maeve into 2 interceptions. And that matters to me as this Chris Ash defense kind of turns week over week over week.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that continues to progress by the playoffs.
Yeah.
They have made improvements, but I can't, at least for now, when I watch it, I see what USC did, and I can't help but think Ohio State is the number one defense, and they probably, while they don't have a better rushing attack than USC, they have better pass blocking and
Yeah.
definitely better receivers to get the ball out quicker. We'll see. There's also the idea that Ryan Day's 3-0 against Freeman, which is phenomenal. It's kind of like Kalen DeBoer being undefeated against Kirby Smart and Sarkisian and Lanning. That's, I think, a good game to close out on. Alabama beating Tennessee. Did you watch the pick six before the half?
I did. Do you like when the camera shakes on big plays?
Yes.
I do too. That's all I was asking about, really.
Yeah, that was my friend texted me, said, "Did you see what just happened?" And I'm like, "No." And he says, "I'm not even going to spoil it. You have to watch it for yourself." So I go to YouTube on my phone, YouTube TV, and luckily it's delayed, so I'm able to jump in, and I don't know what's going to happen. And I watch it happen, and I'm thinking, Oh my gosh. Like if you're a Tennessee fan, your heart has to sink. That one play was a -12 expected points added play.
Whoa.
-12 for
Wait, let
Tennessee.
me let me find the win percentage chance. That's nutty.
Yeah. That was
Yeah, because
crazy.
didn't Tennessee outgained Alabama on the ground and through the air, but obviously the turnovers matter, and obviously like I guess between the 20s or between the 20s, yes, in the red zone, no, and also empty calories because Bama did go up big ish.
Yeah, Alabama's been. I know they haven't been dominating in every game, but given the schedule they have, so at Georgia, you have after that what they got a bye, and then they had I think Vanderbilt at home
Hmm.
or okay, and then you have at Missouri, and then you host Tennessee, and they've won all of those games. They dominated Georgia first half. They dominated Tennessee thoroughly. They dominated Vanderbilt second half, and they got through Missouri on the road, with Missouri coming off of a bye. That's think so far this year that's the best 4 game stretch anyone's played through.
No, that's the best 4 game stretch, and they've done it without Ty Simpson having to throw for 1 billion yards. And I wondered with kind of the changes they went through on offensive structure wise, if they would need to win games in like big Ty Simpson blowouts, and they have not needed to. They've not needed like the Heisman performance every week. And again, like teams that can win multiple different ways, teams that can win on their quarterback's not greatest day, but still look dominant. I think that's kind of a signal for a championship caliber team. Ty was good on Saturday, not great. And it's like if you can dominate a good Tennessee team with your quarterback not playing elite, okay, championship build right there.
Do you think they win out, or do you think they drop another game?
I'm pretty sure they went out. I think I went through this earlier. Yep, they went out. South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma, Eastern Illinois, tough game, and then Auburn. So yeah, they went out, Sam.
Oh yeah, and they get LSU and Oklahoma at home. Auburn might fire their head coach, and
Hmm.
okay, so maybe this will be a nice tidbit before we close out here. So South Carolina's 3-4, and I keep seeing like people reference Shane Beamer in the hot seat conversation. Do you
Yep.
think that's an actual thing?
I do not. I think that job will not come open this year of all years. Florida, Penn State, potentially LSU, not a shot. They want to test those waters right now. Not a shot.
Yeah, it's been quite the regression from what they had last year. It seems like it's just Dylan Stewart and Lenora Sellers and no one else.
Yeah, and they were the media darling. They were.
I never bought into it.
Look at you, because you're ahead of the curve, Sam.
Oh yeah, I mean you can say that and then just ignore Penn State, ignore me picking. Oh, I at one point I think I had Auburn winning 7 or 8 games. That's out the window after they've looked like absolute crap after their scripted drives offensively.
Yeah, no, I mean, what do they have? They have three OCs, right?
Yeah, first down, second down, third down,
Third
and
down,
then
yeah, and then the special downs. Don't know
yeah,
what that means.
yeah, whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, oh man, and then Texas.
I can't stand them because every time I feel like they're about to turn a new leaf, and I go on a show and I do my own show and talk about, hey, Texas, they're growing week over week, similar to how you feel about like Oregon, like, hey, Texas is gonna get there, and they show you they have a pulse, and then right afterwards they're like, nope, just kidding, we lied, we're faking it the whole time, we're fraud. Like they're frustrating to watch on that front because, and also as a Ohio State fan, I want them to be good, and I thought that they finally clicked in. Like last week's supposed to be like a confidence builder. And then they go and look like they forgot that they're actually supposed to score 20 plus with Sark. Like, thank the Lord for Pete over there.
Yeah, and for their kicker. If they had last year's Burt Auburn, what they definitely have 3 losses by now, and they're staring down the
Oh,
barrel of 6-6.
Yeah, easily, and that would be a disaster. 6-6 with that kind of hype, that blue chip ratio, and those expectations. Like they're lucky that Penn State's been so horrible because if they weren't, you'd be the talk of like the most disgustingly disappointing program that we've seen this year.
It's crazy. I mean, Kentucky doubled them up in yards. They just
Which
failed on 2 fourth downs.
should never happen.
No.
Should never happen. Disgusting.
What do you think? Do you think Arch will ever click there, or is it kind of already over and you're just waiting for the off season or preseason?
I guess I wonder how I don't know, Sam. I wonder though how the Mannings feel about his development because that's why he went there. Because Sark's got a CVS receipt of quarterbacks that he's developed going back to his time at USC, and he's respected in circles. And if okay, we could chalk it up to Quinn Ewers. You were just overrated, I think, and maybe didn't have it in you, injury stuff. But I don't think the Mannings are going to hear that excuse with Arch. So that's kind of what I have eyes on. And then, like, if it's weird to say, but like, if you're Lane Kiffin and LSU does open up. Is it like I'm going to LSU if I can bring Arch there? You return back to Louisiana? I mean, again, I think the most fascinating thing about the ripple effects firing-wise is where does Lane Kiffin end up? And the more success that Jackson Dart has in the NFL, you're going to look and be like, okay, like, hey, maybe he's the new quarterback developer. So, don't know.
Yeah, something to keep an eye on for sure. Well, thank you for coming on. I always appreciate your time and look forward to the next video that we will do together. Menace to Sports and Dead Air Sports are your platforms?
Yes, sir. And then for baseball talk, I got the Kris and Pat YouTube channel, and then Fireside Yankees. I'm just always working. I'm easy to find, though. Like, if you're looking for a show of mine, I'm just easy to find, Sam.
Awesome. Well, thank you for letting my viewers know where you are. And for everyone watching, make sure that you hit the subscribe button, you like the video, comment your thoughts down below, tell Kris and I what your favorite game was this Saturday and who you think is the best team in America. Thank you all so much for watching, and we will see you all shortly.